I always run a little bit of risk when I do these videos of looking like a complete asshole or complete delinquent or amateur, and I'm okay with that, because if I can have a couple people maybe avoid some of the mistakes that I have, then that's more important than my ego, perhaps. This weekend, Saturday night, I got a message, call from Josh, who's our lead programmer, and we had basically lost a ton of data, ton of data. I'm talking about 2 years worth of data. I'm talking about 2 years worth of software. I'm talking about thousands of hours, and I'm talking about money I can't even count. And that wouldn't have been a big deal if we'd had our sort of backup or redundancies looked after. We build so fast and do so many things and can be so unfocused sometimes that things get missed, even important things like backups. And we had them, but we were working with a pretty low quality provider, and it didn't quite back up properly, and this and that, and it just seemed like everything just kind of went wrong all at one time. And so we're starting over in a lot of respects. We've got Loganics, which does a good chunk of revenue, 100 plus per month, without an ordering system. Now it's back up, fortunately, because we found a backup that did work, but we're having to manually input thousands of orders, which is costing us a lot of time, a lot of opportunity cost, right? When I got that call from Josh, I realized, and I started laughing as soon as I realized it. It took seconds for me to realize it, and he might have thought I was totally loony when I started laughing, but I realized that there was absolutely no one else to blame than myself. The only finger to point was a finger at me, because everything that happens in my organization, and anything that happens in your organization or on your team or in your group, we can call it that, is your fault. And you have to kind of own it like that. For example, it's my job to make sure that we have, we're spending enough money on our infrastructure so things don't mess up like this. It's my job to make sure that our CTO, Serge, isn't spending 98% of his time on website development and building me tools and things like that, right? It's his job to make sure that, things like this are looked after as the CTO. But I have him tasked on other stuff, so he doesn't get time to put, work on that kind of stuff. And I'm building way too fast. We're not taking our time. We're unfocused. I'm unfocused. I'm building a million things. One day I'm building SaaS software, which I lost, by the way. And the next second, I'm making a push into health and supplements, perhaps putting together a business plan for health and supplements, a health and supplement company. And so, what time does that leave me to focus on stuff as critical as this, right? So, this is not a lesson in backups or a lesson in proper redundancies, but rather a lesson in when shit hits the fan, remember not to point fingers at anyone but yourself. It's ultimately on you. And the reason it's so important, the reason why I find this so important, is because if you start pointing fingers, the other people in your organization are going to start pointing fingers as well at their team, right? And that's no example to set, right? So if everybody's pointing fingers at each other, who's responsible for what? Who's accountable for what? Who really gives a shit, right? So it's important, at the very least, to set a proper example, because, as we know, the fish rots from the head. And I think we've all heard that we lead from the top down. So what we do at the top disseminates all the way down. So the way you act, how accountable you are for things, well, people are going to follow by example, right? So just something to keep in mind. I've chosen to look at this as a blessing in disguise, a chin check, a reminder, and I hope it's useful for you guys, so that you don't have to you don't have to be reminded of this ridiculous sort of amateur type behavior that I always find myself engaging in. Have a great day, guys.